The biggest question Little Nightmares 2 leaves us wondering is why 6 did it. After everything that our character Mono went through to save his friend, why did she allow him to suffer a fate worse than death? I'm Andy Borkowski for VGS, and I plan to answer that question and many more as we examine the different game theories for Little Nightmares 2. Starting with the big one, why did 6 betray Mono? As you may recall, it happened right at the end of the game after Mono defeats the Thin Man and releases 6 from her tormented, monstrous state in the signal tower. As he runs hoping to escape the evil known as the Squirming Abyss, 6 looks him in the eye and drops him into that maw. Many theories have cropped up trying to answer why. Some have suggested that after touching the evil of the signal tower, 6 had changed into a monster within. There's even a suggestion that 6 is somehow saving Mono by stopping him from being consumed by her hunger. The simpler answer, though, has to be 6 is evil. We see that personal transformation in the game as Mono and 6 traveled the world. 6 took revenge and slowly strangled a bully after she was captured. In the hospital, when 6 is left to her own devices, she doesn't quiver in fear. She breaks and pops the fingers off of a prosthetic hand. And when the doctor slowly burns to death, 6 watches and warms herself with his desiccating corpse. This is not a person just trying to survive, but someone relishing in the pain of others. If we follow this concept, this idea, when Mono frees her from her monstrous state by destroying her music box, he loses a bit of himself with each blow. He reminds her of their relationship and the bond they shared. It's why every time he called, 6 was flustered and let go of the music box for a moment. It was reminding her of the bond they had. When 6 finally severs that bond by dropping Mono to his death, she's accepting who she really is, and perhaps accepting the evil within. Which leads me to the next question I hope to answer. Is Little Nightmares 2 a sequel or a prequel? Despite having a 2 underneath the title, there is tons of evidence that suggests Little Nightmares 2 takes place before Little Nightmares 1. Starting with words directly from the developers' mouths in 2019 during an interview with Eurogamer. When asked when the game takes place, one developer answered, "It's a sequel to the first game. It's in the Little Nightmares timeline," is all I can say about that. And they couldn't confirm that 6 had her hunger powers yet without, quote, spoiling the game. Even the website description of Little Nightmares 2 says that Mono sets out to discover the dark secrets of the signal tower and save 6 from her terrible fate. We also know how the game really ends. That special ending that is only available if you find all of the glitching remains shows 6 jumping through the portal and facing her own shadow that gestures to a postcard of the maw, the location from the first game, and we hear that iconic stomach growl, "The hunger has been awakened." Now, I ask, why add that ending if 6 is heading back to the island? Why wouldn't she have any indication of her powers during the events of Little Nightmares 2 if this was a sequel? Why wouldn't she have her iconic raincoat? Balancing all of this against what the developers said, it seems nearly impossible to think otherwise. Little Nightmares 2 is a prequel to Little Nightmares 1. One crafty Redditor even figured out how 6 got from the Pale City to the Maw. Based on the online comics released to flesh out the world of Little Nightmares, 6 is alone at this point in the game, roaming the streets before she's picked up by the ferryman and transported to the Maw. But maybe this was something she wanted to do all along. The secret ending suggests she went there to feed. Now, is that hunger hers or the Black Shade? Which brings me to my next question. Who is Shadow 6? The shade of 6 that we see at the end of Little Nightmares 2 is nearly identical to the shade seen in the first game each time 6 decides to feed. In that game, the shade watches but doesn't interact with the world. In Little Nightmares 2, this Shadow 6 is first introduced when 6 is captured by the Thin Man, and again, the shade helps Mono face off against this entity, leading him to where 6 is currently transforming. There are many different theories on this one, and though it's not 100% clear, I do believe there are two highly likely answers. First, this shadow is in fact a glitched remain. Those are the glitching collectibles in the game that are of a boy and found near a place of death. The general belief is that anything or anyone that interacts with a signal tower, that bright light, leaves this glitched remain. And when 6 was touched by the Thin Man, this glitched remain, this shade, first manifested. There's a deeper theory here for the world that basically says, after a while, all the beings of this world are contorted and deformed by this signal before joining that amorphic evil known as the Squirming Abyss that you see when you're traveling in the signal tower. This explains the blinking eye imagery found throughout the world, why so many people have their clothing just strewn about, and why nearly everyone is slowly deforming and obsessed with that signal. The evil through the signal is literally consuming them to join the blob. This consumption of all things, the destruction of our world, certainly sounds a lot like hunger, doesn't it? Once 6 touched that evil, that hunger was given to her. Many humans in this realm that have special abilities react differently to this evil. In 6's case, as soon as she was touched by that, the Thin Man, he fulfilled his mission. And now that the Squirming Abyss has a new avatar for his hunger, 6 threw that glitching remain. Hopefully that was easy to follow. The other theory is a little more optimistic. It's that Shadow 6 is in fact a memory of 6's soul. Each glitched remain could represent a moment when Mono failed and perhaps died, but the loop continued. Nightmares from previous attempts to save 6, and when Mono does save 6 from the evil of the signal tower, he helps awaken that memory of 6, the one that has yet to be corrupted. And when 6 decides to let Mono die, she is judged by this shade in the special ending. When she gives into her hunger at the maw, she is perhaps judged again and again, because maybe this has happened all before. Which leaves me to my final question: is this all just one time loop? There is no way to prove this either way. It could be that Mono becomes a new Thin Man as the story progresses and the evils of the signal tower still contort the land. It could be that the story will simply continue after the events of Little Nightmares 1. We don't know yet what happens then. But if you'll indulge me for a second, I think there's a possibility that based on symbols in the game and the mechanics present, that the Thin Man and the Lady are a yin and yang of this world, representing control and hunger, with all under the influence of the signal tower, that Squirming Abyss. Could Mono be repeating the cycle of becoming the Thin Man over and over again as 6 perhaps becomes the antagonist from the first game before consuming her, the Lady, over and over again? With these shades, these glitched remains, perhaps they're trying to get them to break the cycle, to stop this Squirming Abyss from destroying the world. The iconic hallway that Mono tries to travel again and again in Little Nightmares 2, when the door at the end finally opens, it reveals the Thin Man is inside. The game begins with us traveling to that door, and the game ends with us traveling out from that door, a circle, to represent the loop making a rotation. Finally, if you look once more at this important hallway to the signal tower and compare it to one of the very first rooms from Little Nightmare 1, it's hard not to see these similarities. The bigger question, though, of why this world is trapped and how we save it is still unclear. There's no possibility that this is conclusive. There's, I think, just as much evidence that the world continues Little Nightmares 2 to Little Nightmares 1, and there is no time dilation present. But I think there are a few moments in this game that could give us an indicator of what's going on beneath the surface. If you had to answer all of these questions based on what I've shared today, where do you stand? What do you believe is the truth? I'm Andy Borkowski for VGS.